Okay, so for those of you who are new here, hi, my name is Kristalis. I'm a community programs manager with the Parkinsons Foundation, and welcome to our Mindful Parkinsons community. Things to note, just quick housekeeping, everyone's muted for the session. You'll see that we're pretty open in the chat, so feel free to communicate questions, thoughts, concerns, suggestions through that chat feature. You'll see that a lot of people are joining on video. We do love to see our mindful community across the country, across the sea. So if you're comfortable with it and capable, please do join us on video. Really big announcements. I want to make sure I've got your attention here. This is our last Mindfulness Monday for May. Next week is our Spanish Mindful Monday, which will be launched through our website at 1 p.m. And then the following Monday is Memorial Day weekend, and yours truly is taking a vacation. So I will see you guys back live on June 6th. Okay. If you want to continue saving this space during the day for your Mindful Monday with yourself and with your spouse or your loved one, find our YouTube channel, parkinson.org. We have a mindfulness playlist. You can choose which one that you've really enjoyed in the past. Or if you're up for it, find the one that you found quite challenging and really practice your mindfulness for the next 2 Mondays offline. So again, next Mindfulness Mondays is June 6th with me. And then this week we have Wellness Wednesday for those of you who have been recently diagnosed or loved ones been recently diagnosed. We're addressing the newly diagnosed community, what that means for you, and how to live a better life with Parkinson's disease. So just learning kind of how to navigate through Parkinson's disease. So that's Wellness Wednesday this week, May 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then our next live launch of Fitness Fridays will be this Friday, May 20th. So join us for Fitness Friday. I won't be there, but I know that my colleagues will be there, and you guys, I know several of you will show up. So show up for yourselves, get some movement in for your Friday. So that's Fitness Friday. Shout out to our sponsor at the Light of Day Foundation for their generosity. Because of sponsors like the Light of Day Foundation, programs like PD Health at Home are made possible. If you have a question about Parkinson's disease that I can't answer, that Dr. Rush is not able to get to during our time for Mindfulness Monday, our helpline is there for you. You can also visit our website at parkinson.org. That helpline number is 1-800-4PD-INFO, or you can email them at helpline@parkinson.org. So Dr. Rush has a really interesting topic for us today. It's been something that we've seen show up time and time again over the years of mindfulness, and we've only recently just put a label to it. So we're gonna open up the can of worms of what it means to be living in a paradox. And Dr. Rush is going to introduce to us that and topic a little bit deeper. So Dr. Rush, I will hand the mic over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Krista. It's so good to see all of you here today. And for those of you who joined us last month when I introduced this topic of paradox, you may recall that we talked about mindfulness being a large part of mindfulness being about how do we manage paradox in our lives, because so much of what we go through is a paradox, right? And so a paradox is basically these two opposing ideas or feelings or experiences that we may have at the same time. So we may feel optimistic and anxious about something, or we may feel saddened but also happy because there are different things that go on at once. Because life doesn't ever seem to want to throw us just one curveball at any given time. It usually likes to throw several because that's what life seems to do sometimes. And so with mindfulness, I think it's so important to be able to recognize that these paradoxes exist. And it's so important to be able to learn how to recognize them and manage them so that we don't become overwhelmed by them or always feel like we have to control them. And that's actually where we're going to lean in a little bit more today. It's talking about the mindfulness of letting go. And, because so often mindfulness is about acceptance, right? So we're trying to accept the present moment without judgment, just being present with it. But then also letting go, which means that we don't attach ourselves to any one thing. We don't attach ourselves to one thought, one feeling, or one experience, because one thing is not what ends up making or breaking our lives or our experiences. And so letting go means acknowledging that something exists, but you don't necessarily pursue it further. And so I find in my life and in my patients' lives that we tend to grasp on to things, good, bad, or questionable, because we often think that by grasping on to certain aspects of our lives, we can retain better control or satisfaction. So if we feel happy, we're like, oh, I want to hold on to this forever because it feels so good. And, I love being on this vacation or being with my family, and I just never want this moment to end. And so we grasp control onto it because we want it to last. Or we grasp onto, oh my gosh, this one situation is really terrible and I really don't want it to last. And I need to figure out how to control it, how to change it, how to make it go away. And so when we grasp onto situations, good, bad, or questionable, we end up further enmeshing ourselves into that situation rather than being able to be mindful with it and recognizing that it's going to come and it's going to go. And so I think, some of this surrounds this idea of, control, meaning that we have a better sense of sanity or stability or freedom. Because so often, especially if we look in our society, we think of control as meaning that we're masters of our own destiny. We're better able to create an outcome that we want in any given situation, or that we can avoid suffering or discomfort, or we'll be happier. And so we conflate this idea of freedom and happiness with control, when in fact, I don't know that any of us have nearly as much control as we want or think that we do. And so, but we believe that we should have more control than maybe we often do in any given situation. And so, I find that to be true in everyday life. And I find that it's true, especially for my folks that I work with Parkinson's. Because what I often find is that control can end up undermining our ability to be content or happy. And so just a very superficial example, just because it's top of mind for me at this point. So I'm in Ohio, I'm in Cleveland. And I really like it in Cleveland because we don't get super hot weather. I grew up in Florida. I understand heat. I understand humidity and how terrible it can be. Hence why I live in Cleveland now. And this past weekend, we had 85-degree temperatures. And that's when my air conditioner decided it didn't want to actually work very well. And I was absolutely miserable. I'm on Friday, I come home, my house is completely stuffy, and I'm just like basically drenched in my own secretions. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is awful. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here. Why did this have to happen on a Friday when the HVAC people can't come until Monday? This is awful. I'm going to get horrible sleep. I can't control this. There's nothing I can do. I was completely entrenched and miserable in my own suffering because I couldn't control the situation. I couldn't control the weather, couldn't control my out of whack air conditioner, and things just kind of, got kind of miserable for me. And so then I decided, I can't really control the situation as much as I want. So I'm going to make the best of it. I'm going to do what I can, going to open the windows, going to turn on some fans, and we'll see what happens. I still may have a completely miserable night, but we'll try it and see what works. And ultimately, it was not the best evening, but I made do, and the next day we actually had a little bit of a break. And so, it was a situation where I'm like, I'm going to be talking about control on Monday. And here I am feeling completely out of control. This feels relevant for me to practice what I preach. So again, we often find ourselves in these situations where control is a bit of an illusion, and we should be able to change things that ultimately we can't necessarily change. And so we find that, if we look at some of the research on control, those individuals who tend to have this very high need for control often feel much more distressed when things don't go their way or people don't behave the way that they want them to. And we don't always necessarily make the best decisions because our assumptions are being violated that, hey, I can't control this, therefore, I need to reject some of the information that's available. And so we tend to make our best decisions when we incorporate all information available, even when it doesn't necessarily fit our mindset or our expectations or our sense of control. And so for my patients who have Parkinson's, we often end up talking about this idea of control. And often what people feel like they don't have control over. So whether that is their own bodies, their physical symptoms, their sense of independence, their sense of the future and what may lie ahead or what may not lie ahead, their relationships. There are so many areas that people come in and talk about, areas that they feel like they don't have as much control. And then they feel less calm, they feel less relaxed, they feel more distressed because they're very much singularly focused on some of these areas over which they don't have control. And if you were to Google, opposite of control, because I did this just to see what would come up, you see surrender, helplessness, and so you see all of these like negative connotations. So if we don't have control, that means that we're out of control. And that is a bad thing by, sense of definition. When in fact, if we think about this from a mindful perspective, that, okay, so if I don't have control, what does that mean? It may actually mean that I can collaborate. I can collaborate with my environment. I can collaborate with others who may not see things the same way as I do. It may mean that I can try to at least invest some time or energy into the things that I do have some say over. So I may not have say over my environment. I may not always have say over some of what my body experiences, but what do I have some say over? Which can also cultivate a sense of empowerment. So sometimes the opposite of control is actually empowerment because we detach ourselves from outcomes that aren't possible, or we detach ourselves from any one particular conclusion of a situation. And sometimes that actually opens us up to freedom of other choices. And so just allowing things to be what they are, rather than trying to change them or control them, liberates us. And so often, my patients will ask me, so how do I change this? Because it's so easy to gravitate towards the things that I don't have control over. And that's true. I think most of our brains go that way. And so, some things to consider might be asking where the need for control may be coming from. So we call that appreciative inquiry. What narrative are you telling yourself? If you're not in control of this situation, what does that mean? Does that mean that you're weak? Does that mean that something else may go wrong if things aren't going your way? Does that mean that you or someone you love may suffer more? What assumptions are you making, or what judgments are you making if the situation is not within your control? And then another thing to consider is acknowledging and appreciating uncertainty, because so often we go to, well, if something's uncertain, something bad may happen. And again, oftentimes that's where our brain goes, is how can I prepare myself for the worst? But sometimes with uncertainty comes pleasant surprises. Sometimes things actually work out better than we would have anticipated or thought that it could. And so, interestingly, from some of the research that's been done, uncertainty can actually lead to a better sense of well-being or happiness, especially if the situation obviously works out a little better than we initially thought. And then again, focusing on what areas can I have some say over that enhance my quality of life? What are the things that I can do in order to, make the best of the situation that I have? And that's not me saying that, we need to spin everything into this Pollyanna positive kind of situation, but are there ways that I can make this situation better, even if it's not ideal? And doing your best to acknowledge multiple points of information. So, one thing that a lot of my patients will say is that, there are periods during the day when their body feels very uncomfortable. They may notice more tremor, they may notice more stiffness, they may notice some spasms, they may notice that their balance is a bit off. And it's so easy to zone in on those things that are not working well, or those areas that are particularly distressing. But what else may you notice? What else may you notice about your body? What else may you notice about your situation or the people that are surrounding you? So acknowledging multiple points of information at times that it can be really difficult, and we talked about that last time, is a skill worth cultivating, because it means that we can have more of a balanced view of what's going on in our situation, not just some of those points that tend to be the most distressing. So I thought that we could spend a little bit of time on something called an "it is what it is" meditation. And so this particular meditation, I want to give credit where credit is due, is by the author is Kelsey Torgensen Dunn. And the idea of this is that we have these thoughts and we have these experiences that come about in everyday life, and some of which are not pleasant, some of which can be quite distressing. But being able to acknowledge it with a sense of neutrality and a little bit of separateness, so that we don't attach ourselves to needing to control the thought or expel certain feelings, but just allowing ourselves to feel it, acknowledge it, and then move on by kind of cultivating this "it is what it is" kind of mantra. So we're going to experiment today. We're going to see how it goes, see what you think of it. And would love to hear your comments about it after we finish, and be able to open it up to some discussion based on your own experiences. So let's go ahead and get comfortable in your chair or your recliner, your couch, or whatever surface you find yourself on today. And you can close your eyes or just find a fixed point a few feet in front of you where you can softly gaze. And as we do with most meditations, just start by anchoring to the breath. Allowing your mind to focus on the sensation of your breathing. Not trying to change it or judge it. Just noticing the breath as it moves in and out. Allowing your breath to anchor you into this present space. Giving yourself permission to just be here. And as the brain inevitably does, different thoughts or emotions may start to enter your mind space. And I just want you to be gentle with any thoughts or feelings or experiences that come up for yourself today. And just remembering that this is how the brain works. Random thoughts, experiences, and judgments will come in and out. At any time a thought starts to come up for you, just take a moment to look at that thought. Explore what it's saying. And just respond to it with, it's okay. It is what it is. And then let the thought gently float away like a cloud in the sky. Anchoring yourself back to the breath. Your thoughts may vary significantly. They may be things on your to-do list. They may be things that you're anticipating with joy or dread. They may be completely random memories. Anytime that thought comes up, notice it and say, it's okay. It is what it is. And then let it go. You may notice the same thing with emotions. You may notice stress, discomfort, worry, frustration. And again, we just want to acknowledge and label the feeling and say, it's okay. It is what it is. And then let it go. Anchoring back to the breath. You may notice that some thoughts or emotions are quite powerful, others a little bit more mild. Some come fast, some come slow. Whatever the strength or speed of the emotion or thought, allowing yourself to say, it's okay. It is what it is. Continuing this process of acknowledging and letting go. By doing this, we are working muscles in your brain that you may not have even realized that you have, which is why it's a process that can take some practice. And that is also okay. But with time, we get better at acknowledging, letting go, and anchoring back to the moment, to the breath, Let's take one more deep breath here. Allowing your body to sink a little farther into your chair. Also starting to shift a little, enlivening your extremities, fingers, toes, shoulders shifting. Opening your eyes when you feel ready, if they've been closed. Becoming more familiar with your surroundings yet again. Setting an intention for acknowledging and letting go throughout the remainder of your day. Starting to see some eyes open. Wonderful. So if anyone has thoughts or comments to this practice or idea today, I am all ears. Letting go is an interesting concept because it often requires a level of, I think, courage and vulnerability that we don't always feel very comfortable with. It can be so interesting to try it because sometimes we are surprised by what we can find.
Dr. Rush, I got a private message from someone who I noticed was having a reaction physically to this particular practice. And she wrote me and said that she did have some strong emotions that came about. And she's just wondering, is it safe and is it okay if I feel these things to sometimes just stay with that emotion and let that kind of energy release itself?
Absolutely. I think sometimes in these moments we're letting our guard down by allowing ourselves to feel whatever comes up. And sometimes that means that there are some strong emotions behind it that we've been pushing away or pushing down. And so, I sometimes use the analogy of a beach ball that we're trying to push underwater all the time. That's our emotion that we're always trying to stifle. And the harder we push it down, sometimes the more force it tends to come back up with. And so, there may be some emotions that people experience in these moments when they let their guard down that they may need to feel. And letting go is not actually of the emotion, but of the suppression of the emotion. So absolutely, if there are things that you need to feel in those moments, that's okay. And remember, emotions are not static. They don't last forever, even though sometimes we get so overwhelmed, we may feel that way. And so allowing yourself to feel it, sometimes the best way to then be able to let it go.
Another private message sent to me. They write, I really liked the message of letting it go. It was nice to be told that the feeling, the emotion, whatever was kind of happening was okay. So sort of validation that I'm telling myself it's okay. Um, and sometimes it's easier to let it go than to just say it's okay. You don't have to be with that emotion, but just kind of let it go.
Yeah, and that's where some of the freedom comes, is that we don't have to stay with any one experience, any one feeling. Sometimes it's going to be there, even if we say, okay, I know that it's there. Letting go doesn't mean we don't feel it. And so sometimes people will say that about physical discomfort or pain. If I let it go, what does that mean? It doesn't necessarily mean that the pain disappears. It means that we are allowed to not have it dictate the entirety of our experience.
Judy wrote a really nice thought. It's making me think about it too. And she said, I moved from my distracting to-do list to the joy I felt last night after watching the red moon phenomena. I saw that too, Judy. It was so beautiful. Um, she said, positive feelings can roll by too. Do I use the same technique for them, the positive emotions as well?
I think we can. It's again, I think sometimes we try to hold on to things because we enjoy them so much and we think, oh my gosh, I want this to last for forever. And when in fact we then just end up feeling the contrast of the loss of it. And so being able to say, okay, I'm going to feel it for as long as it's there, but once it's not there, I can let it go. And recognize that, all of our experiences are transient. So being able to watch the red moon and being able to experience that in the moment is incredible. You get to see nature, you get to see, the amazing phenomenon of our solar system, but then also being able to say, okay, and then when it's done, I move on. And so, but letting go means letting go of any experience, good, bad, or questionable.
I think I said it at the opening. It's all about balance, right? We have to find that happy balance between the spectrum of emotions, the good and the bad and questionable times, and being able to roll through them, as Judy said.
Absolutely.
So that is our time. We're actually a little bit over. Usually, when we have these really stimulating conversations, we always go over. So I apologize for not being a better time manager. For anyone who has questions about mindfulness, you have mine and my colleague Jennifer's contact information through Mindfulness Monday's registration site. Anything related to Parkinson's disease, please don't hesitate to reach out to our helpline. It is staffed by Parkinson's specialists. They know what they're doing. They know resources in your neighborhood to get you further connected to resources that can support you along your journey with Parkinson's. Jennifer posted our email in the chat. It's florida@parkinson.org. That's mine and Jennifer's email. Everything that we do here on Mindfulness Mondays is recorded. So you'll see my face and Dr. Rush's face only on the recording. And nobody's names or personal faces will be on that recording. So you can tune back into it in about a week. So maybe next Monday you come back to this practice, because no one's perfect at it and it's hard to do. So we have to practice at it. You can come back to this particular video next Monday or the Monday following Memorial Day weekend. And we'll see you guys live here on June 6th. So I hope everyone a fun and safe holiday weekend. And Dr. Rush, thank you so much for your guidance today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
All right, everyone. Bye-bye.